The Oak Ridge Reservation holds an important place in our nation's history, and it continues to be a vital part of our national security and scientific research community. But parts of the reservation require cleanup as a result of decades of energy research. The U.S. Department of Energy looks to the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board as the voice of the community on environmental issues. You're welcome to attend meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board to learn more. Call us or visit our website.
First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting. I'd like to remind members of the public to please wear your name tags, please sign in at the front, and please use the microphone for questions, comments. Board members also, please use these, turn them up if you have a question. Also, please use your microphone so they can capture all the information. During the question and answer period later in the evening, we will take questions from board members first and then the public. The next meeting will be Wednesday, October 10th at 6 o'clock here, and the presentation will be the accumulated waste disposition activity. Later in the evening, we'll have a presentation by Laura Wilkerson on the Oak Ridge National Laboratory cleanup activities. That's a bit of board business, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sue Cange for introduction of our new student member.
Okay, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see everyone after our annual planning meeting. I thought that was a successful meeting, and I look forward to this next year working together. We do have a new student with us, Ross. There he is. Landenberger, is that how you pronounce your last name? Very good. Ross is a senior at the Oak Ridge High School. Is that correct? Yep. And he's a member of the International Relations Club, the National Honor Society, and the Oak Ridge High School Orchestra. What instrument do you play, Ross? The bass. Very nice. Ross also works for the Clinch River Environmental Studies Organization, is a member of Oak Ridge's Youth Advisory Board, and volunteers with Keep Anderson County Beautiful. So it sounds like you're very energetic and that you have an excellent reputation for community service. And we want to welcome you to the Site-Specific Advisory Board and thank you for any assistance that you provide to the board this year. So thank you.
Were you going to give the service award at this point on the agenda?
I can. Yes.
Even if it should be for me, I might add. That is self-serving on my part.
Just wanted to announce and thank Maggie for her contributions. I have a little bit of something to read that talks about all that Maggie has done for the Site-Specific Advisory Board. And I understand, Maggie, you've got other commitments. And for that reason, you've decided to leave the board following 4 years of service. So since Maggie's appointment in 2008, she's been a valuable contributor to the board, dedicating an exceptional amount of time to, get this, the EM, finance, outreach, stewardship, and executive committees. So you have participated on all the committees over your 4-year time. Maggie's also been an outstanding ambassador for the board. She's participated in a number of public meetings and conferences, and as we all know, this past year she's been serving as the board chair. So on behalf of the Department of Energy, Maggie, I want to thank you for your dedication to the Site-Specific Advisory Board and present you with this plaque. And I hope that you will be returning and joining the board as a member of the public and participating in the committee work and just staying in touch with all of us.
It has truly been an honor to be a member of this board for the last 4 years. I don't know a group of people that I find more dedicated to their community and to the environment and to help make things right. I've learned so much from everyone. It's just been a really amazing experience for me. And I do hope that one day when my life slows down just a little bit that I can return and finish my last 2 years. But I just want to thank everybody, and I will follow you. I will continue to be very interested in your work. And that's about it, but thank you so much.
All right. Well, let's give Maggie a round of applause.
right, at this point in the evening, we will take comments we will start with Dewey. Sue?
Okay, one last thing, right? Just a little update on what's going on in the DOE world these days. Of course, a lot of our focus is on this being the end of the fiscal year. The fiscal year ends September 30th. And of course, we have been working many hours on what is happening with the fiscal year 2013 budget for the Department of Energy. As many people know, we do not have an appropriated bill yet for 2013, and Congress has determined that there will be a 6-month continuing resolution, which on one hand is good news because that means that we know that there will be a continuing resolution and we know how long it will last. Sometimes, some years, they extend it month to month, and so there's a lot of uncertainty associated with what our funding will be during that continuing resolution period. So this year, it's actually a good thing that they have predetermined that the continuing resolution will last for 6 months, and so we know what our funding will be during that time. So that's kind of the good news. The not so good news about the continuing resolution, of course, is that we are being held to a budget that is a little less than what our fiscal year 12 appropriated amount is. And in some cases, for some of our projects, we don't anticipate a significant impact, but for other projects, we do anticipate a significant impact because we had in our fiscal year 13 president's request a higher number than what we have in fiscal year 12. So there will be some impacts that we do anticipate. To some of our projects, there will likely be the need to have some layoffs during the continuing resolution because we will not have the funding to continue to make progress at the same rate that we are currently making progress or that we planned to make progress had we had an appropriated bill. So we are still working out what those impacts are, and just as late as last night we received new numbers from our headquarters, so this is an ongoing exercise where we get new numbers, we identify the impacts, and then we get more numbers and we identify the impacts of those. So we don't yet know what our final numbers will be, but we do know that there will be some impacts to progress on some of our projects here on the reservation. So that's really Greg?
Excuse me. Yes, you said a slight reduction over your 2012 request. Could you give me a slight concept percentage-wise of what slight is?
Yes, well, and of course, because we don't have a continuing resolution in place, I don't know what those final numbers are.
Are you looking at a 2 or 3% or a 5 to 10%?
Right, so the exercises that we've been running and the numbers that we've been given have been in the up to 10%, and that's because I'm sure many of you have probably heard in the newspaper about the sequestration that may or may not come into effect in early January, where Congress had determined that all federal agencies would have to have a reduction of 10% across the board. And unless Congress does something to eliminate that or change that, that will be something that all federal agencies will be faced with. So the exercises have ranged from the fiscal year 12 levels all the way up to a 10% reduction, depending on whether there really is a sequestration or not.
And Sue, a follow-on, you said in playing the games and not knowing, but there's a possibility of terminating some employees. Are those possibilities DOE, contractor, or both?
Both. Oh, excuse me. Contractor and subcontractor.
Okay.
Yeah, these are the budget numbers are predominantly our project dollars and not salaries for the Department of Energy. So we don't anticipate any sort of reduction in force for the federal employees. But of course, as you all know, we have a very small federal staff in comparison to the number of contractors that execute work for us. Most of our work is performed through our contractors and their subcontractors.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions for Sue? Okay. We'll move on to our EPA liaison. Connie?
Thank you. I don't have any specific announcements to make at this time, but I would be more than happy to attempt to answer questions if asked. Thank you.
Thank you. John, TDAC, John Ansley.
Thank you. I too do not have any announcements, but I would like to introduce my immediate supervisor, Andy Benford. Andy is director of the TDEC Bureau of Environment's Division of Remediation. And for those of you who are not aware, the Bureau of Environment recently underwent a reorganization, and all of our efforts were combined into individual divisions. All of our water programs were combined into a single water resources division, and all of the cleanup programs of which DOE oversight was a part were combined into the Division of Remediation, and Andy directs that division and answers directly to the Commissioner's office. So I don't know if he wants to say anything, but if there are any questions, I'll be more than glad to try to answer those.
I don't have anything prepared to say either. It is nice to be here. I was spending the day with John, catching up on things that are going on here in Oak Ridge. And as you said, tomorrow I'll be in Knoxville meeting with our field office people there, talking about other issues in East Tennessee outside of Oak Ridge. So we do both the DOE, we do DOD, we do private side, we do other NPL sites in Tennessee, we do state superfund sites, we do brownfield, dry cleaners, etc. So we've got a fairly large gamut of things we deal with. But it is nice to be here. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll open up our public comment period with Chuck Jensen.
With that, the public comment period is now open, and we have a list of a large number of esteemed guests this evening. Oddly enough, only one of them would like to speak. Norman? Please state your name and keep your comments short, or 3 minutes.
Good evening. I am Norman Mulvenin. I'm currently the Vice Chair of the Citizens Oversight Panel. Have been on the board for 6 years, and I'm returning I return every month just to see how things are going. This month I've been reading the summary of the annual meeting minutes. It's very enlightening, and I'll have some comments on those probably in next month. But I caution you all now to listen very carefully to Laura Wilkerson. She's going to give you the straight word on ORNL, and we're going to learn a lot. So all the new people that are here, welcome. It's really a lot of fun being on this board. I've been coming to meetings since 1997, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone have changed their mind? Yes, Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan Gowerecki. I'm a former director of the Local Oversight Committee and have been involved with DOE issues for probably 20 years from a stakeholder perspective. I wanted to follow up on what Susan Cange had said. I've been at the Health and Safety Fair that's been over at Y12 most of the week. And the rumor on the street now is that UCOR will be laying off 200 employees. And that'll be their own and subcontractors that they get through their staff augmentation contracts. And I just want to let those of you know what this really means, not just for the Oak Ridge community, but the greater area. DOE is one of the larger employers in the region, if not the largest. And for every job that DOE provides, there is a multiplier that was calculated by the University of Tennessee of 3.2 other jobs being created in the community, which is wonderful, except when jobs are being lost, because that also rebounds in this community. So for each one of those people that is laid off, it's going to affect your retailers, your grocery stores, your service stations, your florists, your doctors, all of these other shops and services in the community, and you're likely to see additional job losses. And when you multiply it all out, we could be looking at 800 or 900 jobs total in this region lost due to these cutbacks. So when you hear about the budget problems, it's not something that is just this kind of intellectual exercise and maybe some work on the reservation doesn't get done. It really impacts the communities. And if you're concerned about that, you need to be talking to your community leaders about it, because they are the ones who are able to bring pressure to bear on federal officials to keep budgets high, not just to get the cleanup done, but to make sure that our economy locally stays healthy and we don't have these ups and downs which hurt us so badly. So that's all I have to say at this time, and great to see a new batch of folks starting a new year with SSAB.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else? As Citizens Advisory Board of the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community at large to attend and participate our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the address shown, and the appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment section of the SSAB this meeting, and will be given the same consideration by the board and the DOE as those given in person. Meeting schedules and ways to communicate with the board can be obtained by calling 241-4583 or by visiting our website. With that, the comment period is over.
Thank you. We'll move on to the presentation portion of our evening with Laura Wilkerson. Laura serves as a Portfolio Federal Project Director in the Oak Ridge Office of Environmental Management. In this capacity, she heads EM's cleanup in the Y-12 National Security Complex and the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. She is responsible for American Recovery and Reinvestment Act work with a total budget of over $630 million. She also directs base EM operations with an annual budget of approximately $140 million. Laura has over 20 years of experience managing and directing technical programs and projects. She holds a BS in Industrial Engineering.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to brief you this night on the progress and plans that we have for the Oak Ridge National Laboratory cleanup. I want to first acknowledge some people in the audience tonight. Bill McMillan was just selected as the Portfolio Federal Project Director for the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which includes the uranium-233 disposition project and the balance of ORNL cleanup, with some minor exceptions that I will keep, and I will continue to focus on the Y-12 cleanup and the transuranic waste disposition. Also, Ken Schneider works for the UT Battelle contractor at ORNL, and he has been instrumental in supporting our efforts on the Recovery Act, as well as Bill Bolosky, also with UT Battelle, and I appreciate them joining us tonight. So to orient ourselves like we do every time, today I'm presenting on cleanup at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, And ORNL is located approximately 7 miles from the center of the city of Oak Ridge, and basically at the south of the city of Oak Ridge within the reservation. The laboratory area encompasses approximately 58 square miles, and the laboratory performs vital missions in support of the science and energy research and development for this country. And within the past 12 years or so, the laboratory has undergone a dramatic transformation, physical transformation, as new facilities have been built to replace obsolete facilities and bring the laboratory to 21st century standards. And those facilities have primarily been constructed to the east of the laboratory area, which is this area right here. These are some of the new buildings. This building right here houses some of the fastest supercomputers in the world. And also to the north of the main campus area, the Spallation Neutron Source, which is a primary research facility in the world for neutron research and neutron scattering research. And also at the west end of the laboratory, a lot of facilities have been constructed for support of bioenergy science and other type of natural science research. So right in the middle of the laboratory is the area that we refer to as the central campus area. And this is the primary focus of the EM cleanup at the laboratory. And this area includes, as you can see, hundreds of facilities, including shut down experimental reactors, former isotope production and research facilities, other research facilities, and waste treatment and support facilities. A couple of things I want to note on this slide is that Building 3019 is right here, right in this area as well, that houses the uranium-233 inventory that is currently in the process of being dispositioned. And this structure right here is what we know as the central stack, and this stack discharges gaseous waste from a very obsolete and aging gaseous waste ventilation system that is connected to a lot of these buildings in this area through a very complex network of underground piping that extends through miles in this area and is contaminated. So this system is a system that we want to get to and decommission to be able to reduce the risks to the laboratory missions and facilities in this area. But we cannot get there until we complete the demolition of the excess facilities in this area. So basically the demolition of the buildings is a prerequisite for the decommissioning of this central ventilation system. And also for that to happen, we need to remove all the legacy materials and sources that are stored in some of the facilities in this area, primarily in Building 3019. So the cleanup of ORNL overall will be very complex and will extend through a significant number of years. There's a high number of facilities that need to be D&D'd and remedial actions that need to be completed as well. But the main challenge for the laboratory is to be able to complete this cleanup safely in the midst of a lot of activity, thousands of employees that work at the laboratory and visitors that come to the laboratory every year to do research. So that has to be done very deliberately, and it's going to be complex. And also there's a variety of radioisotopes that have contaminated these facilities by the nature of what the site is, which is a research lab. There were a lot of different radioisotopes that were introduced to these facilities and are going to be challenging to deal with. So in general, the priorities for the laboratory are to address the accessible sources of contamination to both surface and groundwater, to remove the excess nuclear and radiological materials, to enable the D&D of the facilities, and ultimately be able to decommission this obsolete central gaseous waste ventilation system, and to complete the remediation of the soils and potentially groundwater and surface water at the lab. In the meantime, we have to continue to perform surveillance and maintenance activities to ensure that we are protecting the health and safety of the public and the workers and the environment. And finally, we have liquid and gaseous waste processing facilities that EM owns and operates at the laboratory that not only support our remediation activities, but also support some of the laboratory missions. And we will continue to operate those. Within these priorities, we have achieved some significant accomplishments recently as a result of the Recovery Act funding that we received in 2009, and now I'm going to cover some of those accomplishments. First of all, we completed the removal action for tank W1A, and the tank is pictured here, and this included removal and disposition of the tank, as well as the highly contaminated surrounding soils. And this is a tank that was originally connected to Building 3019, and the connection pipe dislodged from the tank and allowed the contaminated processed water in the tank to be discharged over years through that area and created what we know as the core hole 8 plume. So this was completed in May of this year. We completed the remediation, basically hydraulic isolation of former burial grounds in the southwest area of the laboratory, what we call the SWASA 1 and SWASA 3 areas. And this was about 21 acres that were remediated as a result of this action. We completed the demolition of 43 excess facilities within the central campus area. And in support of these demolition activities, we removed and disposed of legacy material from approximately 35,000 square feet of space. And these are some of the before and after pictures. This is the 2000 complex right here before and after the demolition, 2061 stack, about 200 feet stack that was demolished of the areas where legacy material was removed. We completed the remediation of soils and slabs in the northwest corner of the laboratory, and now this area is available for potential reuse to support private sector and laboratory partnerships. And we just completed that in June of this year. And most of this work that I'm talking about has been completed with Recovery Act funds. This is an exception that was completed with our base funding. We basically upgraded the core hole 8 intercept and extraction system, which is basically a system that captures water from the core hole 8 plume and treats it before it's discharged into the creek. And now the system is more reliable as a result of these upgrades. We completed the installation of a monitoring network across the Clinch River from the Melton Valley area, and this is to enable us to better understand the contaminant flow around the river. And we increased the number of monitoring points in this area to 60, and in conjunction with that, we have discontinued private well usage from the area right across the river and have provided an alternate source of water for the residents in that area. And we now have approximately a year of monitoring results from this monitoring system. And although originally we had some minor detects of radionuclides in that data, they were all below drinking water standards, and they have not been repeated in the most recent data that we have collected from the system.
May I interrupt?
Sure.
Did you say that early on in the drilling that you picked up some rad data, but you no longer see that?
That's correct. There were some very minor detectable levels of a couple of radionuclides, and they were below drinking water standards, and we have not seen them in the most recent data results.
And I assume they were strontium?
It was strontium 90, and which was, do you remember what the other? Technetium 99.
But you no longer see them?
That's correct.
How many times did you see them beforehand? One drill, one well?
It was a couple of hits in a couple of the wells, if I recall correctly.
If I can jump in, one of the theories, I don't know that it's really been confirmed, but one of the thoughts is that there are a lot of residents across the river that used private wells, and one of the reasons why we have taken so many of those residents off of their private wells and hooked them up to municipal is that might have contributed to contaminant migration. Again, it's just a theory, hasn't been proven, but that is a possible explanation for why we might have seen some isolated hits and may or may not ever see them in the future. So that's what our hydrologists have said.
We have, as a result of the implementation of the initial Recovery Act projects and the fact that some of those were, we realized some cost savings from them, we are able to implement additional projects that are currently in process, and I'll go over each one of those individually now. The demolition of the hot cell structures in Building 3026, I have briefed the board before, specifically on this project, and if you recall, when we started doing the characterization in preparation to beginning the work, the contractor encountered greater than anticipated radiological levels, in particular in one of the 6 cells, which is this cell right here, the AB cell. We have, as of April, completed the demolition of 4 out of the 6 hot cells and are currently in the process of accessing this AB cell to remove the radiological sources from the inside of the cell and proceed with the clean out and D&D of those facilities. And we expect to complete that work early next calendar year. We are also dispositioning of 6 excess radioisotope thermoelectric generators that were stored in the central campus area to reduce the inventory there. And this week actually began the process of loading those for transportation and disposal. And we have completed and are in the process of completing additional characterization in the isotope area, and will have completed a total of 9 facilities. The characterization in 9 facilities in the isotope circle, and some removal of waste basically from the outside of the facilities. You can see here a before and after picture of some of that work. Also, as part of the work in progress, we are disconnecting a leg of the buildings that are connected to the central gaseous system. This is primarily laboratory and administrative buildings in the 4500 area, and those are being disconnected from that central gaseous system as part of this project. We just recently completed the investigation of 18,000 acres out of the 34,000 acres in the Oak Ridge Reservation that we don't believe or did not believe were impacted by surface contamination and therefore should not be part of the CERCLA National Priorities List. And we are in the process of finalizing the documentation, and it will be submitted to the regulators by the end of the month. As far as near-term plans, Sue talked about the budget situation, and everybody's aware of the nation's fiscal situation, and we're hoping that for the next several years our budgets will remain constant, hopefully with small variations. And based on that and the other priorities across the reservation at ETTP and transuranic waste disposition and U-233, these are the activities that we're going to be focusing on in the near term at ORNL. Primarily to continue the removal of excess nuclear and radiological materials, and that is principally from Building 3019 and the uranium-233 there. And we will continue the surveillance and maintenance activities to ensure that these facilities are kept in a safe condition and they don't cause any insult to the environment or any undue risk to the workers or the public. We will also continue to maintain the system that we have put in place to address surface and groundwater contamination, and we will continue to operate the waste, liquid and gaseous waste facilities at the laboratory. In the longer term, what we would like to do is to complete the removal of all the excess nuclear and radiological materials, again, to proceed with D&D of these facilities, which will allow us to remove the central gaseous system from use and to address the soil contamination and groundwater and surface water contamination. So at that point, we will select and implement a final groundwater remedy. This is just an artist's rendition of what the central campus is expected to look like, basically to complement a top-of-the-art national research facility. And that concludes my presentation.
Laura, thank you. It's a great presentation. When DOE-EM started on the overall cleanup of the Oak Ridge Reservation, you guys established a timeline based upon reasonable funding over a number of years. With the advent of the Recovery Act funds from 2009, that was a great boon, a great addition. How many years were taken off the overall timeline with the by utilizing the Recovery Act funds?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question, but it's a complicated question because the original baseline that we established did not include all of the buildings and areas that have now come into our program as a result of the modernization efforts at ORNL and Y12. So, you know, the timeline is mainly driven now by the budget assumptions that we expect to remain constant, and it extends into the 2040s at this point.
So basically it did not reduce the timeline at this time. You got more work out of it instead.
Well, the Recovery Act did allow us to make really good progress in the scope that we now have within the EM program that includes a lot more than what we started with.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
Somewhat following up on what David just asked, to turn the question around a little bit, is the rate of new building and reconstruction, evolution of the National Lab, is it paralleling or is it at a rate faster than the cleanup process now? And that goes back to the trade-off in funding and this sort of thing.
Yeah, if I understand your question correctly, the best way I can think of answering is that the modernization efforts have actually left a backlog of facilities that are actually ready to come into the EM program, but because we don't have the funding levels that we need to have to be able to accept those facilities into the program, we have to defer that acceptance, and the owner programs have to keep those facilities in a safe condition until we're able to take them. So does that answer your question?
Well, the question is, how does that affect the modernization of the lab?
Well, it's, as you saw, you have a campus that is being developed to the two ends of that campus, and the middle of it is still awaiting remediation and decontamination and all the activities that we need to complete. So it's pretty much a sore thumb, if you will, within a highly modernized and a huge investment that needs to be protected.
Yeah, the central campus problem then is slowing down the entire rate of modernization of the lab, basically.
I wouldn't say that it's slowing it down because, again, the laboratory has chosen to expand to the east and the west, and I think what they plan for the central area once we complete the cleanup activities is to provide green areas and parking areas and things like that. So I wouldn't say that it's slowing it down, but it's certainly not complementing it until we complete the cleanup.
Jimmy? Go ahead.
Sorry to continue your discussion, Bob. As I understand it, the new programs, new buildings at the lab don't have abilities to handle significant radiation materials. There is no connections to the stack, for instance, those underground connections to the stack. So it's really a a change in the total operation of the lab from what in the past 40, 50 years ago was a radiological center into a non-radiological center. Certainly at very low levels anyway. With respect to that stack that you talked about, which does have underground tunnels and filter systems and all that are contaminated, is it a long-range intent to eliminate that stack?
The long range, yes, the stack mainly supports the buildings that are excess, that are in the central campus area. So once those buildings are demolished and all the demolition is complete for all those buildings, that stack will no longer be needed. There will be a handful of buildings that are have an ongoing mission on the laboratory side, and they would have to have some sort of dedicated stack next to the building to supply the ventilation for that facility.
And those underground tunnels that have the air passage from, say, 4500 North, which is one you mentioned, to that stack, are they going to be cleaned up? Are they going to be filled in?
Yeah, we would have to work the details of that to with the regulators on how we address the remediation of those areas. We haven't gotten to those details yet.
So the long-range purpose is to convert OR&L to a minimum low activity level operation. Would that be correct?
I think there's still high rad activities at the lab. They're mainly in the Mountain Valley area. And there are some activities in this area that, again, will be supported by individual stacks and other, facilities that may have to be built to support them. I wouldn't think that they're going to a low rad or no rad approach at all. And I see nods from my cohorts at the lab here.
That we currently have in operation.
The hot cell facilities that we currently have in operation in the central campus area, primarily the 3025 and the 3025E facilities, the long-range plan is to get those on their standalone ventilation systems so that we can get those facilities off of the central stack.
4501?
4501, 4505, that work is actually going on now to get those facilities on their standalone stacks. Yeah.
So I'll go back to those connecting underground lines where, let's say from 4501 to the stack, there's a tunnel which is integrated with other tunnels.
Yeah. That one is being grouted as part of the project that we have ongoing right now.
So they'll be grouted and sealed up.
Well, I wouldn't want to make generalizations until we have agreements with the regulators, but for this particular case, we were able to at least in the interim, grout it in place.
Now, this tank that was extracted from the ground and removed, and we've heard in the past where the feed line coming from 3019 to that tank had contamination around it. And is anything being done to circumvent any release from that area?
Yeah, I believe that piping. Yes, I believe that piping was capped, and there's no, ongoing releases from the building associated with that.
Was it plugged up? And it's still there.
Yes, the line from the tank. He's asking about the line that went from 3019 to
yes,
tank 1.
the line is still there, but it's not transporting anything from the building any longer.
Do you have anything else, Jimmy, or is that it?
I thought there was something else.
Okay.
Oh, I think what you mentioned about rad transfer across the river is very important. And now you tell me that you don't see any indication of that transfer. Why was that transfer first recognized is a big question. I heard what you said, and I don't buy that. And if I go back and think, seems like I heard somewhere or another that one sample was taken from a guy's well and was analyzed, and that caused a system to put in new water lines and shut off their well supplies, and at a tremendous cost. Is it true that there was only one set of analysis done to activate that job? How many samples was actually done to decide that there was a possible transfer of red across that river?
In 2007, the Department of Energy released a monitoring report for their picket wells. Those were the wells immediately adjacent to the river on the DOE side that showed contamination at depths. The state then went across the river and sampled a number of wells a number of times through 2007 through 2012, actually 2010. DOE then agreed to install their own monitoring wells and also convert some of the drinking water wells to monitoring wells. And throughout that time period, both the state and DOE have found basically the same thing: sporadic, low levels of contaminants. And so the reason for providing water, and DOE can speak for themselves, but as I understand it, the reason for providing water was to simply take the groundwater wells offline so that they were not pulling water, and allow the groundwater to stabilize so that the monitoring could be undertaken under static conditions.
At the present time, are you telling me that sporadically you will pick up some rat in those wells across the river?
We have done, the state has done so in its sampling, and that's what I understand from the Department of Energy sampling as well.
But it is true what Laura had said, that the most recent rounds of samples that have been taken do not replicate any of the previous sporadic hits.
Yeah.
So it's...
Excuse me, recent means what?
When were they
2 years?
last? No.
They're done on a quarterly basis, so say the last couple of quarters at least.
That's interesting. What about correlation with rainfall?
That's some of the difficulties that I'm certain others can address better than I, but the geology of the site is very complex, and it is expected that conditions in the well will change as the water table moves up and down. And so trying to determine whether or not this contamination is in fact there and is presenting a problem is what the FFA parties, DOE, the state, and the Environmental Protection Agency are attempting to work out.
So the state's happy with just a continual look at this thing to try to better determine what's happening?
I would restate that the state is party to a three-party decision that the path that we are taking is acceptable.
Well,
happy is relative.
Yeah, one of the things that we are doing, that we have agreed jointly amongst the three agencies, is to develop a groundwater strategy for this entire area. And I believe that strategy is supposed to be complete at approximately a year from now. Is it at the end of fiscal year 2013? So we are bringing in several hydrologists that have been working on this for many years, and they are helping us to pull together this comprehensive strategy and plan. And so, of course, none of them are here with us tonight to be able to give more specific information.
If I may offer, if this is a topic that is of interest to the board in particular, we can bring the principal hydrologist to give a full-blown.
The board entertain when these guys are pretty well wrapping up, maybe before they do their finished report, but at least a point where they can summarize where they are and give us time to ask some questions.
Right. Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. And I believe, based on our planning session, that this actually was one of the areas identified for the environmental management subcommittee to explore and to investigate with us. So, is that right, Bob? That's yeah.
Are you on the group looking at it, Bob?
Well, what we're trying to do is to get as much information as we can and stay up to date on it. So I'll give a short report on the EM meeting from last month and what we're going to talk about in a week or so shortly, okay?
Thank you. I apologize for not being here the last several meetings, and maybe I'm behind on a lot of things that I could ask, but shouldn't have to ask questions, I guess.
Okay, are there any more questions for Laura? Okay, microphone.
Steve Kenworthy, and my question is, given the current budget projections, which I assume are pretty conservative, outside of the U-233 work and keeping the transuranic waste stuff going on, what year is it, and it's maybe a range of years, when work at ORNL, the central campus, kicks in again after ETTP and Y12 get to start up?
18 to early 20s.
So it's 18 to 20. Okay.
Yeah, and that's based on the assumption that our funding remains level with what it is today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, let's get your microphone.
Just a quick question. This is an awesome undertaking, and I admire you for it. But I'm curious, who is the contractor on this program?
Currently, the recently awarded contract to UCOR, which is a partnership between URS and CH2M Hill, includes the surveillance and maintenance of the facilities that EM owns at the laboratory, and it includes the operation of the gaseous and liquid waste treatment facilities. It does not include the D&D activities at the laboratory. The work that we have done on the Recovery Act has been done primarily through the EM nationwide IDIQ contracting vehicle, which includes a lot of contractors, and we have used SEC, which is a small business, to do some of the work. Lada Sharp has done some of the work, and UT Battelle, through subcontractors, has done some of the work, and Bechtel Jacobs, our former contractor, as well. But as far as having a contract in place to complete D&D actions or remedial actions at ORNL, because that is not contemplated in the near term, is not included in the UCOR contract.
So I assume it isn't done in-house. It's subcontracted out.
We have different alternatives to do that, and I think we're too early to tell how it is going to be accomplished, anywhere from use of the M&O contractor to use of IDIQ contractors to a new EM cleanup contract. That's a wide range that we have at our, disposition, and we have not decided on what the approach is going to be.
Who provides the health physics radiation control?
Currently, for the facilities that we own at the lab, that is UCOR.
And they subcontract?
I believe they subcontract to SEC.
I should also mention we have other contractors as well. That we have Isotech, which is performing the uranium-233 disposition activities, and we have Waste and Advantage Inc., which is performing the transuranic waste processing. So we have a large number of contractors that we manage that all have a role in certain activities at the National Lab.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, thank you so much for your time. Let's give Laura a hand, please. Okay, let's take a quick break and please come back at 5 past. Okay, we'll start off. Are there any additions to the agenda? If they're not, then we will move on to the motions portion, and we'll start off with the meeting minutes from Chuck Jensen.
I've read the minutes of the previous meeting, and they appear to accurately reflect the business that was conducted and the discussions contained therein. And unless there's any additions or comments on it, I move that the minutes be adopted as written. Second, and so move. Raise your hand if you're in agreement. Right hand preferably. Yeah. Got it. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you. We're going on to election of the FY 2013 board officers, and Mr. Paulus is going to assist us with that.
Oh, I love it. Before I say anything, I want to thank the outgoing officers, primarily Maggie, for just an outstanding job that she's done over the last year. And just, she will be missed, and I think we owe her a round of applause for these guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, we had a nomination committee of which I was a part of, and we came up with 3 names for the FY12 starting in October new board. And I'll start. Chuck Jensen has agreed and was nominated to stay on as recording secretary. Dave Hemmelite was our nominee for the vice chair, and Dave Martin is the board's nominee for the chair for this coming year. At this time, I would like to open the nomination process to anyone else who would like to make a nomination. And the rules established for this board are you can nominate anyone on the board, or you can nominate yourself. If a person is nominated, they have to accept the nomination to be considered. With that, are there any additional nominations for the 3 board positions? I'm going to assume that's a no. All right. That being the case, I would like to present the 3 names of Chuck, Dave, and Dave as our next year's board members, chairs, officers. That's the word. Thank you. And I would like to move that be so stated.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who seconded on this?
With that, I would like to see a round of hands if we concur that they should be our members. All in favor, raise your hand. And all opposed? Welcome new board members, new board
officers.
Officers, thank you. That's the brain. The brain doesn't work, mouth works, brain doesn't work. You leave, you move up.
We'll move on to our committee reports. We'll start off again with Mr. Paulus for board finance and process.
First of all, financially for FY12, which ends in 2 weeks, we have not overrun our budget, and we will continue with a carryover into next year. Oh, there it is. And that's good. So we're not spending as much as the Department of Energy gives us, and we seem to be spending it wisely. We again reviewed the articles of our charter and approved those, and that was, I believe, Section 7. And lastly, we are going to, if you all take a look at the spreadsheet that we have our budget on, the Finance Committee at our next meeting, which will be at 4:30, is going to look at trying to expand that and make it show a little more clarity, starting with our FY13 budget. And so the members who are coming, I will get you a copy of that via email so you can look at it. I may even show you some suggestions I have just to get your brains working. But we're going to try to get our spreadsheet of budget aligned with the DOE and how we've been spending.
The U.S. Department of Energy is cleaning up the Oak Ridge Reservation of residual hazardous and radioactive contamination left over as a result of decades of nuclear energy research. Much of that work has been influenced by the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a citizens panel that provides independent advice and recommendations on DOE's cleanup operations. You're welcome to attend the meetings and be part of this important work. For more information, call us or visit our website.